Okay, well, welcome to the Mile 99 interview series. My name is Greg Larkin, one of your co-hosts. It's our 21st episode, and we've been interviewing ultra runners since about May to talk about their running careers, their lives, and other interesting stories that they want to share with us along the way. And I'm joined by my co-host, Mike Turner. Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Good, good. How's it going, everybody? I'm doing good. I'm in Santa Barbara working this week, but going to try to find some local trails after work tomorrow. I'm excited about that.
And Jessica Harris, how are you?
Good. Enjoying this weather. Not too cold.
Yeah, it's been pretty sweet out here for sure. Got out for a little run today myself and enjoying the weather. And so, Mike, as you do, can you kind of fill in everybody that's online right now about what we do with this show and what it's for anyone that hasn't heard it before?
Yeah, so we started this show back in May as kind of a response to the lockdown and restrictions, and people just were not running together, and people were isolated. So we started this series to kind of keep our ultra running community connected and inspired and motivated through talking to various local ultra runners about their achievements and their stories. And it's just been a really great way to connect everybody and just hang out for a little bit.
Excellent. Yeah. I mean, we've really enjoyed it. We've heard some great stories, really inspirational stuff. I know you personally have taken a lot of good advice out of this and applied it in some of your endeavors. So that's always a good sign. And one thing that we just want to also mention is that, friends of the show, the Auburn Aid Station, Apollo's down there running the store. It's an actual brick and mortar running store down in downtown Auburn. And take a look at their website at auburnaidstation.com and check out their online shopping site for anything you might need. And we also like to give a shout out to Monsters of Massage, our local extreme sports massage experts down in Newcastle. If you have any kind of injuries, definitely give them a call, schedule a visit. I will be probably heading in there on Friday morning to get a little more work done on my heel. This has been a recurring thing you've heard me talking about for the last month, I think. So we're getting there. So yeah, definitely check those folks out, and I'm sure they'll hook you up. So tonight, we're really pleased to welcome three guests instead of our normal one. We have Craig Thornley, the race director of the Western States Endurance Run and a 9-time finisher of that race. He was our very first guest on this interview series back in May, and we're super pleased that he joined us then to kick it off and is also back with us now. How are you doing, Craig?
Good. Thanks for having me back, and thanks for continuing this awesome, what do you call it, podcast, Zoom, Facebook, everything.
Yeah, absolutely. We're really pleased that you could join us. We also have Tim Twietmeyer, and he is with us. He's a past president of the Western States Board of Directors and also a board member since 1996. He's a 5-time winner of the race, and he has 25 finishes in under 24 hours. But correct me if I'm wrong on that, Tim.
So far, so good.
All right, great to hear. Yeah. And finally, we're very pleased also to have Dr. Andy Pasternak joining us. He is the medical director of the Western States race. He is also a family medicine practitioner based in Reno and the founder of the Silver Sage Center for Family Medicine. And among others, he has a degree from the University of Wisconsin in epidemiology and preventive medicine. How are you doing, Andy?
Doing great. This is my 5th hour of Zoom meetings today, but this is the one I'm looking forward to. So this will be the fun one.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot. We really appreciate it. And so the whole idea behind this episode here was, we'd been thinking about things we wanted to do, heading into the latter part of this year. As some people on the call know, this was going to be the week leading up to the Western States Lottery, typically the first Saturday of December. But obviously it was canceled due to the fact that the race was canceled for 2020 and the runners were all rolled over to the 2021 race automatically. So therefore the lottery wasn't necessary this year. But what we wanted to do was, just in the spirit of kind of keeping the community tight and getting people excited just about, getting back to normal at some point, thinking about the race next year, is get all these guests together and just kind of talk about what's been going on with the race organization for, since the cancellation through the end of 2020, how things are looking for 2021, any insights that Dr. Pasternak can provide us about, the pandemic as it affects the race, as it affects us in general. These are some of the things that we want to dig into over the next hour. So again, thanks to all three of you. Really appreciate it. And yeah, so I guess I sort of thinking about this kind of wanted to set things up and sort of ask each of you some questions that might fit your sort of sphere of knowledge. But of course, as you're talking, feel free to bring in other guests that we have here that might also be able to fill some things in. So I guess I'll start with you, Craig. And I'm just interested to know kind of like what has, I guess, prior to the pandemic, like what was your day-to-day like as the race director? And then in late March, things completely changed. And how has that changed like from that point to now, like day to day, doing your job?
Wow. Well, we did not have any script for how to deal with a cancellation that was this broad. There was one cancellation in the 47-year history of the race in 2008 due to fires burning all over the state. And that was a very acute cancellation. So people weren't affected all over the world. This cancellation was so broad, and we had to consider the situation that the people who were in the race all over the world, what they were dealing with. Some weren't able to go more than a kilometer away from their house or 100 meters higher than their house in France. So this kind of this broad cancellation, we were one of the first big races to cancel last year. We canceled in March, and the hardest stuff was leading up to that, just the unknown. The numbers weren't that crazy early. It helped having Andy, or Dr. Pasternak, with his knowledge in epidemiology. It helped us try to navigate through these crazy waters. Once we canceled, it actually became a little bit easier. I just suddenly didn't have all this pressure of 3 months before the race. There's a little bit to do before the race, so it was a little bit easier. But then trying to get geared up for the next year with all the cancellations in 2020, all our qualifying races being canceled, it was pretty hard. I am generally an upbeat, positive person, and I definitely had some dark days where I was like really depressed. Wow, we're not going to be able to have a race in 2021. But then I would talk to Andy, and almost every single time I talked to Andy, I would get off the call and I'd be, yes, we're going to get through this. There will be an end to this. We will be racing again soon. And now with the vaccine development, even though we're in very dark times right now, and probably the next month it's going to be perhaps even worse. But with the vaccines coming online, it's just completely changed the outlook going forward for us. I mean, as Andy will tell us here, I don't have any doubt right now that we're going to be able to put on Western States in June. Whether all the runners in the rest of the world will be able to travel here is a different problem. But yeah, that the vaccine development, I watch this stuff every day. I study all this stuff in the middle of the night. And that has really been positive. The runners have been fairly patient. Everybody rolled over. No one took a refund last year and pulled their name off the list, which kind of surprised us. We thought some people might take the refund, but nobody did. The runners have been patient. Some of the runners are in countries that they are unable to leave right now. Australians can't leave, so we've asked them to just be patient and let's see how things develop. And if it looks like travel will be limited in June, then we'll make an offer to all our overseas our overseas entrants in one blanket shot, but we don't want to do one at a time or two at a time. So yeah, it's getting back to normal, but we still can't have meetings like our aid station captain meeting that we have in January. We can't have that in person. So it still feels a little bit abnormal, but it's I'm optimistic and I feel a lot better than I did a month ago.
That's good to hear. Yeah, for sure. A little encouragement. Yeah, I mean, the vaccine development and the rate at which it sounds like they're going to get that out onto the market is encouraging for sure. And I guess, yeah, switching over to you, Dr. Pasternak, like describe like how much interaction you've been having with the board of directors, with Craig, you know, and especially as these developments have been occurring, like literally on a daily basis, it seems like what's the experience been like for you over the past, say, 6 months or so?
It's been interesting. This was last year was going to be I've worked at Western States. I'm the medical director for a few other ultras, but this is going to be my first year as the medical director for Western States, and picked a heck of a year to do it. You know, I think there's been really good communication amongst the board and with Craig. You know, initially when this started happening, I think, you know, one of the biggest things that I was really impressed by the board is, you know, there was this, hey, we really got to lock down. We got to stay in place, you know, isolate in place. And I think a lot of the board members were like, it's really unfair for us to ask runners to go out and try to train and you know, get out on the trails when they're, you know, states, municipalities, countries are telling them that they should really stay in place. And you know, and it was going to be pretty clear that, you know, no big events were going to be happening anyhow. So, but I think the board was really, really good at being proactive about thinking about not just the race, but some of the training that has to go in, you know, that has to be put in before the race. So it's been it's been an interesting year. You know, like, I mean, I'm happy I'm perking Craig up. There's days that, you know, I'm like, oh, it's not going to happen. And it really, for me, it's really been watching the vaccine development, just some of the vaccine results, the preliminary stuff that was coming out in the phase 1-2 trials, and then more recent, you know, the more recent data is kind of giving me more faith that we're going to have something next year. You know, and then the question is how is it going to look? Is it going to look, you know, 100% Western, typical of what we see of Western states, 80%? That we don't know, but I do think getting people vaccinated is going to be a big step in getting us back to some sort of normality.
Do you mind if I ask even this early on, a controversial question then, which just occurred to me? Would you require the runners, the racers, to be vaccinated?
I think so. I think the answer to that is actually dependent on a couple of things. I think one of the questions is at what point. So I don't want to get too technical with this, but the FDA is going to have sort of two different levels of approving these vaccinations. This first one is something called an EUA, or emergency use authorization, which is really kind of saying, hey, this vaccine, we've studied it. It looks really, 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 really good, but we don't want to give it the full, you know, we're going to give it a 95% stamp of approval as opposed to 100% stamp of approval. And I think most of the recommendations are saying, as long as these vaccines are sort of EUAs and they're not fully approved by the FDA, making things mandatory is going to be a little bit tougher. The other issue is I don't think that we really know what the situation is going to be with vaccine availability yet. Yeah. To me, things are looking really promising, but I don't think that we quite know 100%. So we've been talking about it as a board. You know, I've been talking with the board a little bit about it. I think there's still too many unknowns. I do think what's probably going to end up happening is I think international runners are going to have to get, to get in the United States, they're probably going to have to show evidence of vaccination. And, you know, I've been reading some things that a lot of the airlines are going to want to start seeing proof of vaccination before you get on flights. So some of that may end up being by default, just with some of the travel that's happening. that, other organizations are going to be requiring vaccination. So, yeah, I don't want to dodge the answer. I'm a big vaccine proponent, so part of me is like, we got to get people vaccinated. But I think we kind of need to know some of those variables first.
No, that's totally fair. Yeah, I mean, it's so early. Like,
Yeah.
I know it's kind of like a tough question
Yeah.
to answer at this point. It might be easier 6 months from now. But like you said, I mean, there could be other organizations ahead of the race organization that require it anyway for things to happen. So that makes sense. Switching over to Tim, I'm just interested a little bit about if you could just tell us generally how the board is structured, how it operates in general, say pre-pandemic, and I asked this about Craig too, is like pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, and then, was there any type of like contingency plan or anything in place, or was this just like a scramble as soon as you started hearing things and starting to see what was going on in the world? And how did you deal with that? And then further, has that led to building some sort of other types of plans that you might need in the future? Hopefully this won't happen again, but I mean, they've said that these types of things could start becoming more regular. So what kind of plans are in place?
Each time we do one of these, we learn a lot about from the last time. Like Craig mentioned, the last time we had to cancel, it was a little different. We had a fire that canceled the race, and it started the Saturday before the race, right? So we had less than a week, probably more like 2 or 3 days to decide, are we on, are we off? It looked pretty bad. So we really had to make a snap decision such that, in all these, you get caught between a rock and a hard place, right? You want to try everything you possibly can to put the event on because people have been waiting, they've been training, they're all jazzed up about it. At the same time, you don't want to get too close to the race and then all of a sudden have to pull the trigger at the last minute and disappoint everyone. So you really have to weigh those options. And like Andy was saying before, when you're talking about one of the cancellations for this year, was the one thing that was really coming to bear for us. Not only was the runners going out training, but even at our aid stations, we have a full complement of medical professionals out there. And if you remember what it was like in the early days of the pandemic, there was a lot of pressure on medical professionals. They're running out of staffing, people were getting overworked, and we're like, wow, we can't really feel good about saying, hey, you're going to come to the race this year if you're knee deep in COVID patients. But that's what's great about the board. I mean, I've worked on some other boards, and this one continues to have really, really excellent insights on those kind of things. So each time we do this, like we were having a lot of meetings almost weekly with Craig, reviewing what was going on, what's the going trends here, what's the chances that it's going to get better or worse. And in this one, it seemed a little bit I mean, we had a lot more time to pick, but it was easier to cancel early. And that way everyone can make other plans. There's so many people coming from all over the world, and they're bringing people and they're bringing crews, and there's much more impact than just the runner themselves. So, and then we learned that, like I said, we learned a lot the last time, what to do. And how, I remember Greg Soderlund's quote was, we know how to put on a race, but trying to cancel one's a lot more difficult. We're used to just, putting people on the starting line and getting to the finish line, but, telling everybody not to show up, we're not going to put the race on is really painful. So yeah, it's each time we learn a lot more, and then we pass that along. We've got several board members still that were around in 2008 when we had to cancel because of the fire, and we have some new folks. So a lot of that knowledge and learnings that we had the last round certainly get transferred onto the new folks as they come in and start taking over and have to make the hard decisions. And kind of us guys who've been around are just more advisors and trying to provide perspective from the previous times.
Sorry, you'll have to excuse me here for a second. I got a cat over here. We're on live. So he's having a little issue right now. Maybe Mike can take a question.
Yeah, so that's the deal in 08. It sounds like the last minute cancellations, that's a big difference. I mean, locally it's okay. I suppose it's not a big deal, but if you're traveling, I guess that was challenging. But it sounded like that was a very short notification. You had to make change in plans within days, and you had supplies and resources stockpiled and perishables probably. It sounds like that was pretty challenging at that point, huh, Tim?
Yeah, and we had the same kind of things to discuss there. And just like we're talking about this round, we have medical professionals that we would have tried to tap into that didn't seem like the right call. Back in 2008, you had fires and both sides of the canyon. We're like, do we really need 5,000 vehicles out on this road while these guys are trying to put a fire out in pretty much the same zone? And we're like, yeah, this is probably on the even just for the race, for the goodness of all the other guys that are around and doing it, it was the right call. But that one, it's tricky because you think, oh, the fire could go out tomorrow. Well, if you've been around enough Forest Service fires, they don't go out that quick. So we made the call pretty fast on that one. But people need to be able to cancel and get their money back on the flights or anything else that was going on, or be able to cancel their hotel without eating all those costs. So that was definitely another thing that goes into your mind, is trying to do the best for all the runners as they travel and make sure you don't put any undue burden on them for canceling.
Yeah, and I think this year people were expected everything to be canceled. So I think it was a little bit different this year. It's also more, like you said, globally, like Chris, this is a global problem. So I think everyone expected it. Just a little reminder real quick that Jessica is recording questions for folks that are on Zoom watching or on Facebook Live. You can leave your questions as soon as you want. She's jotting them down. Towards the end, we'll have folks post questions and go on live and record questions. So, Greg?
Awesome. Thanks for that reminder. Yeah, I appreciate it. So I guess the kind of question maybe for both Craig and Andy is, I'm interested to know kind of what was the earliest point at which you got sort of the idea that something was happening globally and that it could be affecting things here. I went back last night and just kind of read through the press releases. I think the first one was on March 10th, and then there were a series of 2 or 3 of them, and then finally the cancellation came, I think, 17 days later. So, it was a pretty short period of time there. There was a lot of hope initially that we could keep it going, but then it kind of became apparent that it wasn't going to happen. But how early ahead of that were you seeing things happening and thinking this was possibly going to impact the race?
Well, I'll go first, Andy. So Way Too Cool happened in early March. We helped at that, and that was kind of a different type of event. There wasn't much spread of the virus yet at that point, but it was definitely a scary time. And then Paolo's race, what was that? Pioneer Spirit was the last race to happen, as far as I know, in the country right before things started closing down. The state changed or restricted events less than 250. That was kind of a scary thing. I immediately stopped registration for the training runs. We were under 250, thinking, okay, we're just gonna squeeze by on this 250, and then it just kept going downhill from there. Yeah.
I started to get nervous. So my both my in-laws grew up in Italy, and so my wife has a lot of friends and family in Italy. So when I started seeing what was happening in some of the regions of Italy, when things were happening in China, you're always like, well, what's the health? You sort of don't really know what stories you're hearing. But when things started happening in Italy, I started to get really nervous about, hey, this is going to be coming to the U.S. at some point. And what's going to happen. I was helping out, doing some medical. We had a big cross-country ski junior Olympics up at Donner Summit, and that was literally the week things ended up shutting down. It started, I think, on March 8th or March 9th, and they were supposed to have 4 races, and they kept asking me, can we do this? And and that was right at the time. I think the last race was on March 13th or 14th, and we got 2 races in, and we had to cancel midway because people were like, we're getting back. And looking back, I mean, we sort of had the pressure of the kids were already there. Do we do the races or do we send them home? And I kind of look back and I'm like, well, maybe we should have sent them home early. Fortunately, no one got COVID from that. So I feel like we kind of dodged a bullet. But yeah, after that experience, I was like, it's going to be a while before we're going to have a big event.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just so interesting going back and reading the press releases and sort of thinking about like, how things just immediately sort of shifted for all of us, almost like a light switch, or at least a slower light switch over a period of a couple weeks, sort of the before and the after. So yeah, it's definitely been a huge impact, as you all know. Um, what about, Andy, your medical practice? I mean, you have a background in epidemiology. How much of the time do you spend kind of in that focus area? You're a family practitioner, I guess, as well. Like,
Yeah, so I'm a pretty much a full-time private practice family practice doc. So, I would say the last 6 or 8 weeks, we've been just doing a lot, taking care of a lot of people with COVID, and getting them tested, getting them evaluated, trying to figure out who needs to go to the hospital, who doesn't need to go to the hospital. So it's just been really busy with COVID work in the last few weeks, and then um, uh, you know, the other big thing that I've been doing a lot with our state on is sort of the vaccine planning and vaccine rollout. So yeah, it's been on the medical side of stuff. It's the last. It's kind of interesting when COVID first hit. We kind of shut down our practice, and it was like, don't do anything. And so for us in primary care, we were still seeing some urgent care patients, but it was actually in Reno. It was actually really quiet. I mean, we didn't have a big COVID flood early in March and April. So those first couple of months it was actually kind of nice. I could go out at lunchtime and get a walk in and relax a little bit. But yeah, the last 4 to 6 weeks between dealing with this big surge that we're seeing in northern Nevada, and then doing the vaccine planning, it's been burning the candle on both ends. So
yeah. And are you involved at the state level then with the vaccine rollout?
I'm doing a lot. Yeah, one of the hats I wear is I'm currently I work with our state medical association. I'm currently president elect there, and then there's a group called Immunize Nevada, which is a nonprofit that I've been involved with. So we've been trying to just organize communication between the state and the providers of when the vaccine. We're hearing vaccine will get approved next week. When the state's going to get it, where providers are going to go to get vaccinated, and then trying to get the timing of, we're trying to get our hands on vaccines so we can get all of our patients vaccinated, and how that's going to look. So, and I think most people know that the first one that's coming out has this extra special cold storage that everybody's, it's a new thing that we have to kind of deal with the logistics of that.
That's the minus 70 Celsius or something.
Yeah, minus 70, minus everything I read slightly different, but it's just really cold. Yeah.
Very cold. Yeah.
So I got a question, Andy. Not to get too deep into the science. So there are two main vaccines coming out, and you have to get 2 doses of each. Just simple questions. If you start with one, you have to finish with one? And 2, there's 6 or so other ones coming out that are a different type of science. And when you get one of those, you have to stick with that. Can you just quickly explain, without getting too deep into how that works, to the basics?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So the way I look at it, there's probably going to be 5 vaccines coming out total. The first 2 have this new mRNA technology. And the advantage to that is you can actually just make the vaccine faster. I mean, they literally had this vaccine made within 2 days of getting the genome from China. So that's why the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna are the first 2 to hit the market. So they have very similar technologies. The results look really good. The side effect profiles are very similar, which I think is very reassuring. If you get the Moderna vaccine, you have to get the second one as a Moderna vaccine. If you can't switch between them. Even though they're similar technologies, they're slightly different enough that if you get, I'm probably going to get, just by default, I'm probably going to get the Pfizer one first. So the second one, I would get the Pfizer one. You can't switch between them. So those are the first 2 that are going to come out. There's essentially 3 more that are going to come out. Some people have probably seen some on the AstraZeneca. Johnson & Johnson has one that's a similar technology to the AstraZeneca. And then there's a third vaccine coming out from, I think it's Novavax. That's it's a protein based. So it will have basically 3 technologies, probably 5 different vaccines using 3 different technologies for vaccinating people.
That's good to know. Yeah, just so people have kind of an idea, because I mean, we've heard so many manufacturers in the last couple of weeks all of a sudden coming up with things, but it's interesting to know that, yeah, they do use different technologies, and that we'll have to kind of stick with one, and hopefully, I think there are a few that don't require the super refrigeration, so that's helpful, I think, for the providers and the rollout and all that too.
Yeah, there's only one that's going to require that super cold, and the first 2 are coming out. Like I said, it is a new technology. People are nervous, and what I'm telling a lot of my patients is, by the time you're going to, especially my younger, healthier patients, by the time you're going to have vaccine available, you'll probably have 2 or 3 different options to choose from.
Mm-hmm. Just switching gears a little bit, I wanted to go back to Craig and Tim and talk a little bit about how things have been with the runners over the past several months. I know at one point, and I think we've got a few of the runners on the call here, they received a little bag of goodies from the race. I think that was much appreciated, and just sort of like interested in the communications you've had with people, what their reactions have been, just kind of what have you been hearing from the runners?
Well, first off, the race did not send those packages out. Hoka did.
Oh, okay.
Jim Moore said, "You got all the credit, Greg," but he did all the packaging. It took him 2 weeks to package it up because the sticks that you guys got didn't fit in a shoebox, so that slowed down the whole packaging and shipping. But yeah, the runners were, I think, surprised and pleased to get that. It was a good thing to do. It felt good from our end to show runners that, yeah, we're still thinking about you. And I think our communication last year, as you already mentioned, you reread all the press releases. We were writing so much, we were communicating so much with the runners. I think that really helped us going into this year. I've only had a few people asking about, can I defer to next year because I can't travel? I think runners have been amazingly patient, and I hope they know that we're going to do the right thing for them. We did it last year. We'll do whatever is the right thing this year. That's what we will do. So it's been a pretty easy year. Normally this time of the year with the lottery, I'm just hammered with people asking for things, and I have to say no. I call it the no season, and I haven't had any of that. So it's been really an easy year so far.
Nice little break for you. How about you, Tim? Have you been interacting with any of the runners, or kind of at the board level of any sort?
I hear from a few, but mostly notes from Craig and what he's getting, through email and maybe a few Facebook posts or whatnot. But I think in general, it went pretty positive. I mean, it's pretty hard to over communicate in that, right? People just want information. The more you can send out, the better. Just tap it out on a regular basis. I'm sure that's what's going to happen here as we kind of swing into the new year. And, Andy can update us on the vaccine progress and everything else. But we have a lot of options, a lot of strings we can pull to make sure everybody gets what they need, right? If runners want to run, hey, we'll figure out a way to get you to run. If you really need to defer because you got travel problems, we'll probably figure out a way to make that work. It's funny only because 10 or 15 years ago there wasn't as much demand in Western states, right? But now when you have 5,000 applicants for 300 spots, we spend a lot of time trying to make sure we take care of the people that are in the event.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think just a testament to, the board and the organization over the past few years with the number of, policies accommodating people, that have different requirements in their lives and things like that has just been sort of illustrating, I think, sort of the forward thinking aspect of the board. And I would expect this is going to be no different, like you said, it's never bad to over communicate. All of us, we're entered in a big race, no matter which one it is, we want to know what's going on. Like that's what people want to do. Like they just want to know what's going on. And it seems like you're all disseminating that information really well. So that's a
And
good
there's
thing.
several committees on the board that people work on, and actually that one, the guys that came up with the pregnancy deferrals and some of these other things, they spend a lot of time on that, trying the odds and ends, the ups and downs. What if we do this? What if we do that? But at the end of the day, a lot of those committees spend a lot of time, and normally they get it right, because they can go out on the trail, talk to runners. Hey, what do you think about this? Do some sampling, and people usually give us really solid feedback, so that by the time we noodle over it, we come to the right conclusion.
Yeah. I mean, we've got a good sample set, in the area, just polling people and talking to the runners and all that. So it's nice to be it's nice to hear that the organization is plugged in like at such a grassroots level with the people. Like there's not this kind of ivory tower feeling. I'm not getting that at all from what you're saying. So that I think should give some reassurance to the runners and other people concerned about the race that you're working on it and you're doing what you can.
Yeah, what's interesting is the board continues to get more diverse, not only from the people standpoint, from the location standpoint. So we do have people. It used to be primarily the Bay Area and Placer County, right? Now we've got Topher's generally on the East Coast, so he can tap into those folks out there. We've got there's another person in Oregon. Now we've got Billy's in LA. So even there, you're tapping into different groups of folks. Some of those might have different opinions based on the regions they're from.
Yeah. Well, and since you mentioned that, that was one thing I wanted to ask you was about the fact that you did just add 3 new board members. You've got Magdalena Boulay, Kara Teklinski, I believe is her name, and Billy Yang. And can you just talk about kind of the process for board members? I mean, are they directly replacing people that left, or are they building out the size of the board? Like, what's the process, I guess, for bringing new people in, vetting them, and
Yeah, so Craig and I were talking about this the other night, but it was kind of the advantage of having a race that doesn't take place is we get to work on all that other stuff that isn't quite as exciting, right? Governance and how the race is put on by the race director or the board. But in general, we start out by just looking at what we did this year is we created like an emeritus. We've always had an emeritus, but we got an advisor group. So John Menninger and Don Zay and who's the third? Oh, Tony Rossman, right? They all kind of moved to an advisory role, so they're not really active board members, but we would certainly have access then to tap in, and all of the guys have such rich knowledge. If you don't, John's been around the sport forever, race director, president of the board. Tony is really, really great on trail preservation and maintenance, and he was kind of our tap into Washington, the Congress and whatnot when we get into congressional debates. And Don Zay is really locally connected to the local politicians and got us, when we needed to talk to McClintock about certain things that are going on in the Forest Service or whatnot. Those guys really tap into that. So we still have access to them in the advisory board, but then we look at, okay, now what do we really need as the board evolves, right? Now there's different needs of the board than there might have been 20 years ago. There's much more media related stuff. There's all kinds of stuff that goes with that. Again, we're trying to, get into more diverse groups of people, not only by location, but where they are in the sport. And so we kind of, Diana Fitzpatrick, our current president, her and the rest of the group, the executive committee kind of made a matrix of what do we really need to add to the board and what are we missing perhaps that we never had on the board. And so then we look at those talents and try to fill accordingly. And yeah, it's hard. I mean, there's a lot of good people out there, and it's just a matter of trying to match it to what we need today. And obviously, there's guys like me that have been on the board for quite a long time, and a couple others that over time will probably cycle out to the advisory board with the others and make room for some folks that, can come in and bring some fresh ideas in for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a great process. You still have that kind of knowledge base available to you, but then bringing in some new people, especially like you said, from different parts of the country or wherever, just get some diversity and get tapped into some other populations of runners. I mean, that sounds like a really good plan.
And it's great to have that mix. So as new people come in, we still got Mo Livermore. She's been around since the beginning. You've got Gary Toll. He's been the treasurer for more than 30 years. And some of these other guys, Charles Savage has been on the board for quite a long time, probably 25, 30 years. And so you kind of get this transfer of knowledge, right? You got the guys, the seasoned veterans that have been around, and they kind of have the perspective of where the race has been. And then you've got new folks that are trying to drive the race to another level of, its prominence in the sport and whatnot. And so that it's kind of really a rich mix together for sure.
Nice. Hey, switching back to you, Craig. One of the things I was wondering, obviously this year has been a big disappointment for a lot of people. We've had to refocus, and I think people are trying to make the best out of things. I know personally, Mike and I have been spending a lot of time, as you know, out in the North Fork doing some exploration and things like that. And, not something we'd normally do necessarily or do as often because we're so focused on races or other things going on. And so I guess from your standpoint, I'm wondering, have there been any unexpected surprises, like positive things that have come out since March that you just never would have imagined?
Well, Dan Barger running out and back
Yeah.
from here to Olympic Valley, Olympic Valley and back was a pretty incredible surprise. And there were a couple others. Kelly, who ran backwards? Not Kelly.
Oh, Rob Myers.
Pirate Bob. Yeah.
Yep.
He ran the reverse direction. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I was a bit surprised about the virtual races that happened. I participated in a couple of them. The first one was the Aravaipa Limitless, as much elevation as you could do in a week. And then I also participated in Palos, 100 miles to Auburn in June. And I was surprised that I liked them, that I was engaged and it gave me something to do. And I was kind of surprised that those were as effective. And some of the race directors around the country were calling me and telling me they're making a killing off of these virtual races. And they send a T-shirt and I don't know, a medal, not a whole lot of money, and they're at least making up for the lost revenue from the real events. So that surprised me.
Craig, I think.
What?
One thing, Greg, I think that a lot of people really took the opportunity, not training for something. A lot of interesting things happened, and not having to qualify for something. It was just really opened the door for all these virtual, all these new achievements, a lot of FKTs. We've been talking to a lot of folks about fastest known times this summer. It's really been interesting to see just what runners could do when they have nothing else to do.
Yeah. Yeah, Hoka was still selling shoes. People were running.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and just to say, circling back to the swag that they sent out. I mean, they're a first year sponsor. Is that right, Hoka, for the race?
Yeah.
This was going to be their first year.
Yeah.
And I think I remember talking to you earlier this year about some of the ideas they had for televising the race. I mean, there was some big plans going on, and obviously we hope to see that in the future. But yeah, just to say, a first year sponsor, the race gets canceled and they're there for you. It sounds like, I mean, they send out all this stuff to the racers and kind of show the commitment. That's got to feel good, I would think.
Oh, they were incredible. They are incredible right now. Yeah.
Excellent. So I guess the other thing I just want to make sure that we don't forget to mention is that at the aid station on Saturday, this coming Saturday, which would have been the lottery day, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, at 5 p.m. there's going to be a live drawing for 5 spots into the 2022 race. Is that right?
That's correct. We have 2 raffles a year, 2 drawings a year, one at the lottery and then the other at the pre-race briefing at Olympic Valley, and it's for the following year. So we don't have a lottery this year, so we're gonna do an event at the aid station. Kara, I think, is on this call right here. I see her. Kara and Billy and Magda are going to be interviewed. Our 3 new board members are going to be interviewed by Diana Fitzpatrick, our president, and Topher Gaylord, one of our vice presidents, and then we're going to do the drawing. And it'll be live on Facebook. Probably not this same format. There's Kara. Hi, Kara. So we'll get to learn a little bit about them. I think most people probably know Billy Yang. When I tweeted out the announcement that we had new board members, I tweeted out from the Western States account. Billy Yang retweeted it, quote tweeted it, and he got, at the time I looked at it, it's a couple days later, he had twice as many likes as the Western States post. Like, this dude's popular. So people know him, and Magda obviously is an Olympian and accomplished at the marathon distance and a former champion in Western States. So she's fairly well known. But Kara is probably not as well known. But she's been working with ultralive.net for quite a few years, and not just at Western States, at other races too. So it'll be nice to learn more about her, and then we'll do the drawing. We'll get five new people in the race for 2022.
Since she's on, I'm not meaning to steal the thunder of Saturday too much, but since she's on, and let me see if I can get her to unmute here. I just wanted to, hi, Kara, welcome. Since you're on, and since we were just talking about new board members, you can, obviously you'll do the introduction on Saturday at the aid station. I don't want to steal anything from that. But one thing I do want to know as a new board member, what was it like coming in this year?
We've actually not had our first full board meeting since we've been announced. So it's been more about onboarding and orientation. So a lot of reading, a lot of past minutes, and learning about all the different committees that we can take part in. So it's super exciting, but it's just a lot of, just getting onboarded to what we can expect in the next few months.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it's going to be super busy over the next 6 to 9 months, and then lots of kind of just going with the flow, I would think, as things develop. So yeah, welcome. And I'm sure we'll all want to hear more about you and the new board members on Saturday at the aid station interview.
And Kara is in the race. She was in the race in 2020, got rolled.
All right.
Oh no.
So we're going to
at least there's still somebody on the board running.
Exactly.
That's why we picked her. No.
There you go.
We're going to try to be a little kind to her.
Yeah.
Magda's also in the race.
Oh, okay.
We won't put too much on their shoulders here.
No, I'm sure not.
Billy, no, he doesn't get any rest.
As long as you beat Craig's last time, Kara. Just, I don't know what.
Right? Oh, thanks.
You took the first shot, Greg.
Well, thanks, Kara. I appreciate you just letting us know about that. One thing I wanted to just kind of go back a little bit. We're going to get to some audience Q&A questions here in a little bit, but switching back to Dr. Pasternak, I personally, and I would think a lot of people are interested to know kind of what defines a pandemic. This is switching off from the race temporarily, but just what defines a pandemic and what defines the end of a pandemic, and what is sort of your process for understanding that and seeing that over the next, hopefully, year at the most, but who knows, but what are those sort of definitions for us?
Yeah. So basically, we talk about an epidemic. An epidemic is basically you get sort of a huge number of cases, but it tends to be fairly regionalized. Pandemic means it's sort of going across borders, and that's really what happened with this one. The question of how do you define a pandemic is over, I think is that gets a little bit trickier, and it really, to me, it really you need to have a couple of months where you're just not seeing massive spread of the disease. And so, I do think I've been telling people we're closer to the end of this thing than, especially with the vaccine now. I think we're getting closer to the end of this. So, it'll be interesting to see when and what I sort of picture is in the United States will probably declare an end of this, faster than, I think like World Health Organization will probably be, maybe another year before they declare that the pandemic's over or is under control. So, and I think that's going to be the other thing is there's going to be a big difference. It's sort of like a wildfire, is the wildfire out or is it under control? And I think we're sort of going to get to a point where we're like, okay, it's under, we've gotten this COVID pandemic under control and we can sort of get back to doing normal stuff.
Yeah, I think we're all certainly aiming towards that, and hopefully it'll get here as soon as all the rollouts happen with the vaccines. One thing I'm also interested to know about, your role with the race organization is that over time, Western States has really been a a race where a lot of medical research has been done. And I was wondering if you could kind of fill us in on, what has happened in the past and what sorts of research projects, the medical team, you included, obviously, are interested in, and what you see going forward. Will there be anything related to COVID in the, like next year somehow with research, or what sort of plans do you have?
So I'm the medical director. Western States has a different research director who's Dr. John Diana, who's done a really good job with the research program. It'll be interesting to see what happens with some of the COVID and ultra running stuff. I mean, obviously, we're starting to see people with long hauler syndrome and some of these other issues. We know in certain athletes, COVID can affect the heart. There's so many people that want to do research at Western States that, I mean, Dr. Diana has a, stack of people and that are all, and he ends up having, he and the board sort of decide what research projects are going to be pertinent and so we kind of have, the same thing with research that happens with the runners. I mean, we had people that wanted to do research this year that couldn't do the research projects. So some of that's going to roll over as well now. So, I do think that the area of COVID affecting endurance athletes is going to be that's going to be a big hot topic for the next couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you've got this incredible pool of, anywhere from elite athletes down to, regular runners that have, day jobs and all of that. So, I mean, it seems like you've got this incredible pool of people that you can test and just find out more about. And hopefully that'll contribute back to some of the science, and who knows, like, maybe contribute to avoiding future pandemics, or, anything, anything would be good, I'm sure, from your standpoint. So Craig and Tim, regardless of the pandemic, regardless of the cancellation this year, let's assume things, go forward next year. We're all pulling for that, obviously. Just in general, can you kind of paint a picture of what you see the next 5 to 10 years of the race looking like, how it's going to evolve? Are there any plans in place already? Have you had plans, that kind of get updated, over time to sort of forecast things? Any changes you see, anything that you could update us on?
Yeah, I see in the chat here, someone asked about the 369 limit. Well, are we going to do anything to try to get more than 369 runners? It's always a hot topic. And sometimes it feels like people think we're just sitting there and like, oh, this is what it is, so we're not trying. No, we actually are trying really hard, but it's a very complex problem. And it involves Congress and the chief of the Forest Service. It involves rewriting MOUs from 1990. We're exposed in some ways if we try to push it too hard. We were really close to getting 40 extra spots from Tevis, because Tevis hasn't reached their capacity. And then we were advised by the Forest Service, the local Forest Service, to not pursue that, because it would then it would go out to public scoping. And not everybody thinks that we should be running through Granite Chief Wilderness. There are groups that are strongly against it. So the risk of having a group, or having people organize against the race, it could jeopardize us using Granite Chief at all. So I don't think you're going to see that change in the future. We are, I'm going to leak this out, Tim.
Oh no.
Oh no.
You heard it here first.
We are pursuing putting on another event.
Oh, you weren't supposed to tell them about that.
So
No.
I'm not going to tell you any details of that, but we're working on that, and it probably won't be until 2022 after all this, all of this confusion and uncertainty about permitting events. So be on the lookout for announcements on that. It's going to be really cool. We probably are going to be making changes to the lottery, as probably everybody here knows, everybody on this call knows, that we do a paper, we put pieces of paper in this big old drum, and that drum is now really full, and I got the biggest drum that I could find. If anybody knows of a bigger drum, then let me know if you want to build me one. One of the challenges is with our lottery process is making sure that the probability of getting selected in successive years increases. And because we have had such a huge increase in the total number of applicants to the tune of 10 to 20% a year increase, it has not been the case necessarily that in year one you have 5%, and then year two you don't have a higher percentage, your percentage actually goes down. So the way that we could increase it more is to change the multiplier. So instead of 2 to the n-1, we could have it grow faster than that. But because we're limited to a paper system, we just can't add that many more tickets. We can't give somebody 500 tickets. We just physical limitations of that kind of lottery. So we'll probably develop a different type of lottery system.
Just don't make the math any more complicated, Craig. You had to explain that 100 times the last time, and I'm still trying to explain it.
I know. I think we'll at least accept the 2 to the n-1. They may not quite understand it, but they're like, whatever. I get twice the number of tickets.
The new entry will require solving a math problem. I've got one for you that most of the runners probably don't know about, but Craig and I have been working with the Forest Service on for probably at least a couple of years, and it's probably going to be maybe 5 to 10 more years we're working on this. Is there's two major or pretty major trail reworks that are in the planning process. One's to move the trail in Granite Chief higher onto the ridge to make it a little more sustainable. If you've run there a few times, when we go through, there's just a muddy bog pile. And even though the Forest Service went in there and did some nice rock work and whatnot a year or two ago, we're trying to move that trail higher on the ridge so it's a little bit more runnable and sustainable and on better grades. The other one is kind of a multi-sectional redo all the way from Lion Ridge to pretty much Michigan Bluff, although a lot of the later trail isn't being touched, but they're trying to reconfigure some of the steeper parts of the trail to make them more sustainable. Just for example, like if going out of Lions Ridge, that one little steep pitch right as you go out of the aid station, there's a lot of rocks in it, a lot of stuff it's just really hard to keep clean. So they're going to try to put some switchbacks or something in there. And when what we've been doing is working, we said, you're going to do this over a long period of time. We're not going to change the course every time you take, a half a mile out here, add a mile there. So we've made an agreement with the Forest Service that they'll make all those changes and we'll just let it roll. And then 1 year, maybe, I don't know, we'll see when that's all done. We'll go and remeasure the course and, shrink it or expand it based so we can get right back to 100 or 101 or whatever, 100.1 miles. So not a lot going on there, but you'll see flagging out on the course in places where they're provisionally marking it so you get an idea where it's going to go. Particularly if you look down at Duncan Canyon, that whole climb up into Robinson Flat's going to be redone.
Good to know. Oh, thanks a lot for all those insights. I'm sure people are going to be really interested to see whatever comes out of the organization over the next few months or whatever, and expect a flood of emails, I'm sure, like starting like tomorrow or tonight. So
they were going to try to redo the climb to Devil's Thumb, but that's such a good climb. We just don't touch that one. Everybody loves it just the way it is.
Yeah, some of those iconic ones you got to leave. Well, I know we got a bunch of audience Q&A questions. Is that right, Jessica?
Yeah, I have a couple. Maybe we can squash some more rumors. One of the rumors floating around is that this is the last year for golden tickets. Is that true?
Where did that come from?
I don't know. Rumor on the trails. We gotta squash it now.
No. We before I got here, Tim can speak to this better than he can speak to it first person. We need a way. We still value the pointy end of the race. It's important to have a competitive field. And before the Montreal Ultra Cup, which is what it was called before, Golden Ticket Series, people, fast runners, would send an email to Greg Soderlin, my predecessor, and say, "Hey, I'm fast. I'd like to come run Western States." And the Special Consideration Committee, which Tim has been on for a long time, or used to be on, would then have to evaluate and say, "Oh, you're not fast enough, but you are fast enough." So having a Montreal Ultra Cup or a Golden Ticket Series objectively allows us to let those people in. They earn their way in, and we think it's exciting. When we changed it all to post lottery instead of pre-lottery, it adds this element of excitement. Like, this is it. This is your window to get into the race. So no, we'll always have, at least in the foreseeable future, we're going to have some type of series where people can race their way in. The races may change with our new sponsor, Hoka. It's probably only going to be Hoka sponsored races that will be Golden Ticket races. There has been discussions about having some overseas races in the Golden Ticket Series. We're not ready to make those decisions right now, but those could be in the future. But no, we're no.
Man.
Yeah, and to reinforce what Craig said, it was really hard to draw the line on that special consideration. Who's really fast and should be in the race. And now you just go, run Lake Sonoma and come in the top 2, and all you have to do is beat like the last 5 Western States champs. No big deal. You'll be fine.
Man, we're getting a lot of insider information. This is very exciting.
Yeah, we're revealing a lot tonight. This is good.
And then can you talk about, since this year qualifiers races have just kind of, stopped, can you talk about what the qualifying is going to look like after 2020? Like, how is that going to affect the people in the lottery right now and the qualifying races? Do we know any of that yet?
Yeah, so the qualifying period for the next lottery, which is the 2022 race lottery, happens in December of 2021. There's a 2-year qualifying window. We're in the second window of that. So the races that got canceled last year, if you were going to run one of those for your qualifier, you can now run it this next year, run a race this next year, and there's no requirement, or you don't have to do anything to keep your ticket counts this year. It's just a 2-year period. Remember, ticket counts are accrued based on the number of lotteries that you are in and are not selected in. So we're not having a lottery this year, so you don't have to take a bye for this year. Everybody basically gets a bye. And we expect, unless we have to cancel again, which I don't expect that right now, but we expect that we'll be back to normal the following year. So 2023 will have a 1-year qualifying period.
Perfect.
So that's
and then switching gears a little bit, I have a question, a little bit of a complicated question for me, for Dr. Pasternak, and this is from Troy, and he is wondering about CK enzyme. Does Western States really test runners voluntarily to see what the CK concentration is in the blood of runners after running Western States? It was something I heard about third hand or maybe fourth hand. Just wondering about your experience with the CK levels in long distance runners.
Yeah, so I saw that question. That was something States, I think, was doing for a while. We haven't been doing it in a while. Basically, what that's measuring is when you exercise, when your muscle breaks down, it's a measurement of your muscle breakdown. So obviously, when there's people who run 100 miles and they run from Olympic Valley to Auburn, there's a lot of muscle breakdown. So we see those levels go up. We see this a lot. People go to the emergency room. A lot of times the ER docs are like, "Oh my God, their CK levels are up." And for those of us who have covered ultra running a lot, we're like, "Yeah, that's because they just ran 100 miles." So we do worry sometimes when those levels go way, way up. That can actually start to affect the kidneys. And there's been case reports, and we've seen some patients who end up needing dialysis for a couple of days until they clear that stuff out of there. But yeah, we're not routinely doing that right now.
And sometimes those are part of a research study.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, when Dr. Lind was still around working on the race, it was kind of a good way for people that, specifically those people that were going to travel home. A lot of times people with high CPK levels, they'd get home and then end up in the hospital once they got home. And so it was a way to tell them, hey, you know, your CPK level is like way out of bounds. So, you know, really watch it. And we've had a lot of people that did that. They traveled home and then ended up in the hospital 3 or 4 days later after the race. So it's kind of a precursor to say, hey guys, keep an eye on this, keep drinking, watch your kidney function. And if you feel really like crap and you start gaining like 10, 15 pounds of water, head to the doctor.
Yeah, my goodness. Thank you so much for clearing that up for people like me who had no idea what it was about. My next question is for Kara. David in the chat was wondering how you're kind of juggling all of it, training for a race that's happening and being a board member and everything that's going on. Can you kind of talk to us about how you're handling all that? And welcome.
Sure. I have a full-time job as well. I work for a biotech company. That usually takes up most of my time, but I'm really good at getting up at 3 a.m. because I work global hours. So I run at 4 or 5, and then I do the rest of my job each day. You know, like I said, the board responsibilities haven't really kicked in yet, but I'm sure they will. And luckily, I have a fantastic coach who's also on the line, Ian Torrance, who flexes my schedule as I need it to be.
Perfect.
Those are great questions. Good questions. And I do have one before we get to wrap this up here. I did, in 2 weeks, there's another exciting route over the Sierras. I wonder if Tim wants to quickly mention the adventure that's going to happen in 2 weeks. I've been following on Facebook. It's going to be really, really exciting.
Well, kind of a long yarn, but Bob Crowley and I, for the last few years, have been trying to research this story about the Forlorn Hope group, which was the guys that were stranded, part of the group that was stranded at Donner Lake with the Donner Party. And we'd read some books and, you know, researched the story to the point where most people know the Donner Lake story, where the people got stuck at the lake and there was cannibalism and all kinds of bad stuff. But a lot of people didn't know the fact that there were 15 people that started out of the lake and were going to snowshoe to what is today modern day Wheatland to get help for everybody back at the lake. And they took a wrong turn and ended up in the North Fork and, you know, some of the most extreme terrain that's around there. But the story's kind of gone dead from that standpoint. And we thought it was a story worth telling again. So Bob and I and Elke Reimer and Jen Walker-Hemmen are going to do the original, or what we believe was the original route they took. So from Donner Lake over the summit, you know, then making the wrong turn out at Emigrant Gap and heading down into the North Fork over to Iowa Hill and then out to, at the time, the big place to get to was a place called Johnson's Ranch, and it's right on the outskirts of Wheatland. So it's about a 100-mile trek in the middle of the winter. So the 15 that started out, 7 of them actually made it to Wheatland alive. The other 8 died along the way. And then they were able to get help back to the people back at the lake to get the rest of their families taken care of. So kind of an old American history, I would say reenactment, but it's been fun researching the story and talking to people and trying to figure out where they went. So we'll find out if we start and the weather cooperates on the 16th.
Yeah, so 2 weeks from today, I guess.
Yep.
Well, I'm going to do my best to get out to the start, not interfere with anything, but just kind of hopefully get some pictures and see you guys off. And hopefully also, you know, we've been talking to Bob about getting a little podcast episode together, just talking about the trek and everything. And I know we all wish you guys all the best. It's going to be really exciting also to follow the live tracker. And I'm sure we're going to post all that on our page as well.
Cool. Yeah, it'll be great.
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank everybody. I guess we've come to the end of our episode here. Craig, Dr. Pasternak, Tim, really appreciate you all taking the time. I know you've got lots of things you need to be doing and just sit down with us, spend an hour just talking about, you know, what's been going on with the race. You know, obviously filling us in on next year. It sounds like things are going in a good direction. And we're all excited to hear that. So yeah, I really appreciate your insights on all of that. So wrapping up, I just want to also remind people once again, make sure to tune in to the live drawing for the lottery tickets for 2022 down at the aid station on Saturday at 5 o'clock. I believe that's going to be streamed on at least the aid station page, if not the Western States page. Is that right, Craig?
The Western States page, yeah.
Western States page. Okay, great. So tune in there on Facebook. And yeah, we'll be back in 2 weeks. As always, if you like what we're doing, please go over to our Facebook page, The Mile 99 Interview. Give us a like. We're on Instagram as well, The Mile 99 Interview. We also just launched a website. We haven't quite, it's more of a soft launch. We got to announce it soon, but it's at themile99interview.com. And you can see all of our old episodes there, subscribe, leave us a review if you like, and we'll always be happy to hear any feedback that people have. So we'll be back in 2 weeks, and we will also be releasing additional podcast episodes. We started a new series about a week ago, talking to a woman in New Hampshire who has been a distance hiker and has been temporarily sidelined by breast cancer. And we're kind of spending some time getting to know her and hearing her story and what her plans are for the future. It's called Rebecca Red Lions Cancer, and you can find that on our podcast feed. And we hope you enjoy that as well. We'll be recording another episode with her tonight or tomorrow night, and releasing that on Sunday afternoon. So look forward to that. And you'll certainly see this episode released on the podcast very shortly as well. Thanks again to everybody that joined and to our guests, and take care, and we'll see you all on the trails. Bye-bye.